The Divine Pymander of Hermes Mercurius Trismegistus, translated from the Arabic by Dr. Everard. Preface by W. Wynn Westcott, Supreme Magus of the Rosicrucian Society, Master of the Quator Coronati Lodge. This volume contains the English translation by Dr. Everard, 1650, of 17 tracts, of which the Pymander is one, attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, otherwise Mercurius Trismegistus, or in the Egyptian language Thoth or Tautes, or Tat. Of this Hermes no reliable historical details have come down to us, but many of the ancient authors have referred to Hermes as an inspired teacher who instructed the priests and rulers of the Egyptian nation at a time almost certainly anterior to that commonly associated with Moses. It has been asserted by men who have been called learned that this Hermes was really identical with Enoch, and by others he has been identified as Gautama the Buddha. If the name Hermes be taken, and the suffix es be neglected, and the word formed of the letters hrm be traced through Chaldea, Coptic Greek, and Latin forms, an analogy will be observed between Hermes and Harim, the hero of the myth of Freemasonry, a symbolical system of morals and theosophy which is but a reconstruction of a portion of the ancient mysteries. Now the mysteries of Egypt, named Osirian, Serapion, and Azak, are the most ancient known to us, and were the parents of the Eleusinian mysteries of the Greeks. All these mysteries were initiations or forms of esoteric instruction relating to theosophy, properly so called, that is, the knowledge of divine powers and beings, and the connection between man and the divine source from which he is animated and inspired. Now the tracts which have come down to us associated with the name of Hermes as their author are all concerned with that arcane wisdom which was developed in three directions: theosophy, religious and ethical teaching; alchemy, the relation of material to the spiritual and the transmutations of the former into the latter; and magic, the employment of the higher powers latent in man upon the physical plane. In the Hermetic tracts these several objects are not kept distinct, but on the contrary are almost invariably combined. Hence the great value to a true student of occultism of these very ancient writings. It is not, of course, asserted that the Pymander or all other Hermetic work has come down to us in its original form, but is contended although varied in many a line and possibly in many a doctrine by the Neoplatonists and Alexandrian school, and perhaps in later days by Christian philosophers, the Pymander, Aureus, etc., do yet enshrine the very old Egyptian ideals, and are almost the only remains now existing of the wisdom of the hierophants of the Nile Valley. Keenly has asserted that the name Hermes meant in the ancient Egyptian language an interpreter, and in certain senses the later Hermes of the Greeks and the Mercurius of the Romans conveyed the same notion. This author, in his quaint conceit of 12 saviors, places Hermes under the name of Thoth as the sixth Messiah, and assigns to him the era of 1800 years before Christ. This Thoth, as an Egyptian divinity, is often represented as a human form with an ibis head. Now the bird ibis was notable as being the great destroyer of snakes, and snakes, as apart from the regal serpent, was an emblem of evil, sin and error. Hence the snake destroyer fits in well with the character of Hermes as a teacher of divine truths, which would serve to crush and beat down evil thoughts and actions. The earliest record of the title Trismegistus, as applied to this Egyptian sage, is found in Greek authors who lived some 4 centuries BC. The Neoplatonists, who were of Greek culture, looked upon Hermes as the embodied logos, or word or manifestation of the divine spirit. The title many have referenced to his mastery over the three divine sciences, theosophy, alchemy, and magic, as indeed is stated in paragraph 12 of the Emerald Tablet assigned to him, of which the words possessing the three parts of the divine philosophy of the whole world. The name Pymander is of Greek and not Egyptian type. It is variously spelled Pymander or Poimandres. Its derivation appears to be from poimen, a shepherd, and anna, genitive, plural, andron, and so the guide of man, shepherd of men, and is nearly equivalent to Messiah. In this tract, the Pymander is giving instruction to Hermes the sage, in the capacity of divine teacher to human pupil. A parallel concept is seen in the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna teaches Arjuna. Blavatsky in The Secret Doctrine refers to the Pymander as the thought divine and inspired teacher of that race. Volume 163. And again, page 74, she speaks of the Pymander as the oldest and most spiritual of the logi of the Western continent. She also notices the possibility of a Hebrew derivation from pi, meaning a mouth or command or instruction. I observe that Parkhurst associates this with this word, the Greek phemi, to speak, so perhaps another form of title may be Pymander, one who spoke to man. There are two other persons mentioned in the Pymander. These are Tat, assumed to be a son of Hermes, and Asclepius, a grandson. The Pymander has been many times printed, but it is a very difficult volume to obtain. Recent editions have been those of Hargreave Jennings 1884 and reprint of Everard's English version, John David Chambers, Edinburgh 1882, a new translation from the Greek, and that of L. Menard, Paris 1867. The earlier date are the Greek text of C. Parthe Veronolis 1854, an Italian version by C. Lenzoni 1548, a German edition by J. Schibli 1855, a French translation François de Foix 1579. The earliest Latin edition is that of Marcellus Vicinius 1471, followed by the Franciscus Particius 1593, Flacius 1574, H. Roselius 1630 and 1676, and others contained in the volumes associated with the writings of Lucius Apuleius of Maduria, and with the books attributed to Jambalicius of Chalcis. Challenge. The present edition is a facsimile reprinted of the translation of the Reverend Dr. Everard from an Arabic text, of which there are two editions published in 1650 and 1657 respectively. This edition is from the earlier one. No alterations has been made except in the mode of spelling of a few words, the archaic form of which in the original was feared distract the reader's attention from the subject. It is preceded by a preface by J.F., whose name is unknown. The second edition was a reprint of the Pymander and continued in addition an English translation of 15 chapters of Asclepius with a commentary. Very little is known of the Reverend John Everard, D.D., but Alsager Vian states that he was born about 1575 and died about 1650. He entered the church and remained a minister for many years, but was frequently suspended, sometimes for heretical doctrines and at others on account of political sermons. It is most probable that he was in truth a Neoplatonist at heart, and was also a disciple of the German mystic Tola, His original works contain many quotations from Plato, Proclus, and Plotinus. With these notes I leave this preface without any attempt to comment or explain the subject matter of the Pymander, believing that it will be better for a student to read and assimilate what he can from the original rather than to read the work through my spectacles or those of any other fellow student. Judicious reader, this book may justly challenge the first place for antiquity from all the books in the world, being written some hundreds of years before Moses his time, as I shall endeavour to make good. The original, as far as is known to us, is Arabic, and several translations thereof have been published, as Greek, Latin, French, Dutch, etc., but never English before. It is a pity the learned translator had not lived and received himself the honour and thanks due to him from Englishmen for his goodwill to and pains for them in translating a book of such infinite worth out of the original into their mother tongue. Concerning the author of the book itself, 4 things are considerable, vis-a-vis his name, learning, country, and time. The name by which he was commonly styled is Hermes Trismegistus, therefore Mercurius Trismegistus, or the thrice greatest intelligencer. And well might he be called Hermes, for he was the first intelligencer in the world, as we read of, that communicated knowledge to the sons of men by writing or engraving. He was called Trismegistus for some reasons which I shall afterward mention. His learning will appear as by his works, so by the right understanding the reason of his name. For his country he was king of Egypt. For his time it is not without much controversy betwixt those that write of this divine ancient author, what time he lived in. Some say he lived after Moses his time, giving this slender reason for it, vis-a-vis because he was named Trismegistus for being preferred, according to the Egyptian customs, being chief philosopher, to be chief of the priesthood, and from thence to be chief in government or king. But if this be all their ground, you must excuse my dissent from them, and that for this reason, because according to the most learned of his followers, he was called Trismegistus for having perfect and exact knowledge of all things contained in the world, which things he divided into 3 kingdoms, as he calls them, vis-a-vis mineral, vegetable, animal, which 3 he did excel in the right understanding of, also because he attained to and transmitted to posterity, although in an enigmatical and obscure style, the knowledge of the quintessence of the whole universe, which universe, as I said before, he divided into 3 parts, otherwise called the great Elixir of the Philosophers, which is the receptacle of all celestial and terrestrial virtues, which secret many ignorantly deny. Many have chargeably sought after, yet few but some, ye Englishmen, have happily found the description of this great treasure. It is said to be found engraved upon a smaragdine table in the valley of Hebron after the flood, so that the reason before alleged to prove this author to live after Moses seems invalid, neither doth it any way appear that he lived in Moses' time, although it be the opinion of some, as of John Functius, who saith in his chronology that he lived 21 years before the law was given by Moses in the wilderness. But the reasons that he and others gave are far weaker than those that I shall give for his living before Moses' time. My reasons for that are these. First, because it is believed amongst the ancients that he was the first that invented the art of communicating knowledge to the world by writing or engraving. Now if so, then in all probability he was before Moses, for it is said of Moses that he was from his childhood skilled in all Egyptian learning, which could not well have been without the help of literature, which we never read of any before that invented by Hermes. Secondly, he is said by himself to be the son of Saturn, and by others to be the scribe of Saturn. Now Saturn, according to historians, lived in the time of Sarug, Abraham's great-grandfather. I shall but take in Suidas his judgment, and so rest satisfied that he did not live only before, but long before Moses. His words are these: Credo Mercurium Trismegistum, Serpentium Egyptium Floris, Anet Pharaonium. In this book, though so very old, is contained more true knowledge of good and nature than in all the books in the world besides. I accept only sacred writ, and they that shall judiciously read it and rightly understand it may well be excused from reading many books, the authors of which pretend so much to the knowledge of the Creator and creation. If God ever appeared in any man, he appeared in him, as it appears by this book, that a man who had not the benefit of his ancestors' knowledge, being, as I said before, the first inventor of the art of communicating knowledge by posterity by writing, should be so high a divine and so deep a philosopher, seems to be a thing more of God than of man, and therefore it was the opinion of some that he came from heaven, not born upon earth. There is contained in this book that true philosophy without which it is impossible ever to attain to the height and exactness of piety and religion. According to this philosophy, I call him a philosopher that shall learn and study the things that are, and how they are ordered and governed, and by whom and for what cause, or to what end, and he that doth so will acknowledge thanks to and admire the omnipotent Creator, preserve and director of all these things, and he that shall be thus truly thankful may truly be called pious and religious, and he that is religious shall more and more know where and what the truth is, and learning that, he shall yet be more and more religious. The glory and splendour of philosophy is an endeavouring to understand the chief good as the fountain of all good. Now, how can we come near to or find out the fountain but by making use of the streams as a conduct to it? The operations of nature are streams running from the fountain of good, which is God. I am not of the ignorant and foolish opinion of those that say the greatest philosophers are the greatest atheists, as if to know the works of God and to understand his goings forth in the way of nature must necessitate a man to deny God. The scripture disapproves of this as a sottish tenant, and experience contradicts it. For behold, here is the greatest philosopher, and therefore the greatest divine, read understandingly this ensuing book, and for thy health thou mayest make use of that voluminous Hannibal Ophelia Alabar commentary written upon it. Then it will speak more for its author than can be spoken by any man, at least by me. Thine, in the love of the truth, J.F. Hermes Trismegistus, the first book. O my son, write this first book, both for humanity's sake and for piety towards God. For there can be no religion more true or just than to know the things that are, and to acknowledge thanks for all things to him that made them, which thing I shall not cease continually to do. What then should a man do, O Father, to lead his life well, seeing there is nothing here true? Be pious and religious, O my son, for he that doth so is the best and highest philosopher, and without philosophy it is impossible ever to attain the height and exactness of piety or religion. But he that shall learn and study the things that are, and how they are ordered and governed, and by whom and for what cause or to what end, will acknowledge thanks to the workman as to a good father, an excellent nurse, and a faithful steward, and he that gives thanks shall be pious or religious, and he that is religious shall know both where the truth is and what it is, and learning that, he will be yet more and more religious. For never, O son, shall or can that soul which while it is in the body lightens and lifts up itself to know and comprehend that which is good and true, slide back to the contrary, for it is infinitely enamoured thereof, and forgetteth all evils. And when it hath learned and known its father and progenitor, it can no more apostatize or depart from that good. And let this, O son, be the end of religion and piety, whereunto when thou art once arrived, thou shalt both live well and die blessedly, whilst thy soul is not ignorant whether it must return and fly back again. For this only, O son, is the way to the truth, which our progenitors travelled in, and by which, making their journey, they at length attained to the good. It is a venerable way, and plain, but hard and difficult for the soul to go in that is in the body. For this first must it war against its own self, and after much strife and dissension it must be overcome of one part. For the contention is of one against two, whilst it flies away, and they strive to hold and detain it. But the victory of both is not like, for the one hasteth to that which is good, but the other is a neighbour to the things that are evil, and that which is good desireth to be set at liberty, but the things that are evil love bondage and slavery. And if the two parts be overcome, they become quiet and are content to accept of it as their ruler. But if the one be overcome of the two, it is by them led and carried to be punished by its being and continuance here. This is, O son, the guide in the way that leads to thither, for thou must first forsake the body before thy end, and get the victory in this contention and strifeful life. And when thou hast overcome, return. But now, O my son, I will by heads run through the things that are. Understand thou what I say, and remember what thou hearest. All things that are moved. Only that which is not is unmovable. Every body is changeable. Not every body is dissolvable. Some bodies are dissolvable. Every living thing is not mortal. Not every living thing is immortal. That which may be dissolved is also corruptible. That which abides always is unchangeable. That which is unchangeable is eternal. That which is always made is always corrupted. That which is made but once is never corrupted, neither becomes any other thing. First God, secondly the world, thirdly man. The world for man, man for God. Of the soul, that part which is sensible is mortal, but that which is reasonable is immortal. Every essence is immortal. Every essence is unchangeable. Everything that is double. None of the things that are stand still. Not all things are moved by a soul, but everything that is moved by a soul. Everything that suffers is sensible. Everything that is sensible suffereth. Everything that is sad rejoiceth also, and is a mortal living creature. Not everything that joyeth is also sad, but is an eternal living thing. Not every body is sick. Every body that is sick is dissolvable. The mind in God. Reasoning, or disputing, or discoursing in man. Reason in the mind. The mind is void of suffering. No thing in a body true. All that is incorporeal is void of lying. Everything that is made is corruptible. Nothing good upon earth, nothing evil in heaven. God is good, man is evil. Good is voluntary, or of its own accord. Evil is involuntary, or against its will. The gods choose good things as good things. Time is a divine thing. Law is humane. Malice is the nourishment of the world. Time is the corruption of man. Whatsoever is in heaven is unalterable. All upon earth is alterable. Nothing in heaven is servanted, nothing upon earth free. Nothing unknown in heaven, nothing known upon earth. The things upon earth communicate not with those in heaven. All things in heaven are unblameable. All things upon earth are subject to reprehension. That which is immortal is not mortal. That which is mortal is not immortal. That which is sown is not always begotten, but that which is begotten always is sown. Of a dissolvable body there are two times, one from sowing to generation, one from generation to death. Of an everlasting body, the time is only from the generation. Dissolvable bodies are increased and diminished. Dissolvable matter is altered into contraries, to wit, corruption and generation, but eternal matter into itself and its like. The generation of man is corruption. The corruption of man is the beginning of generation. That which offsprings or begetteth another is itself an offspring, or begotten by another. Other things that are, some are in bodies, some in their ideas. Whatsoever things belong to operation or working are in a body. That which is immortal partakes not of that which is mortal. That which is mortal cometh not into a body immortal, but that which is immortal cometh into that which is mortal. Operations or workings are not carried upwards, but descend downwards. Things upon earth do nothing advantage those in heaven, but all things in heaven do profit and advantage the things upon earth. Heaven is capable and a fit receptacle of everlasting bodies, the earth of corruptible bodies. The earth is brutish, the heaven is reasonable or rational. Those things that are in heaven are subject or placed under it, but the things on earth are placed upon it. Heaven is the first element. Providence is divine order. Necessity is the minister or servant of providence. Fortune is the carriage or effect of that which is without order, the idol of operation, allaying fantasy or opinion. What is God? The immutable or unalterable good. What is man? An unchangeable evil. If thou perfectly remember these heads, thou canst not forget those things which in more words I have largely expounded unto thee, for these are the contents or abridgment of them. Avoid all conversation with the multitude or common people, for I would not have thee subject to envy, much less to be ridiculous unto the many. For the like always takes to itself that which is like, but the unlike never agrees with the unlike. Such discourses as these have very few auditors, and peradventure very few will have, but they have something peculiar unto themselves. They do rather sharpen and whet evil men to their maliciousness. Therefore it behoveth to avoid the multitude and take heed of them as not understanding the virtue and power of the things that are said. How dost thou mean, O Father? Thus, O Son, the whole nature and composition of those living things called men is very prone to maliciousness, and is very familiar, and as it were nourished with it, and therefore is delighted with it. Now this wait, if it shall come to learn or know that the world was once made, and all things that are done according to providence and necessity, destiny or fate bearing rule over all, will he not be much worse than himself, despising the whole because it was made, and if he may lay the cause of evil upon fate or destiny, he will never abstain from any evil work. Wherefore we must look warily to such kind of people, that being in ignorance they may be less evil, for fear of that which is hidden and kept secret. The end of the first book. The second book, called Pymander. My thoughts being once seriously busied about the things that are, and my understanding lifted up, all my bodily senses being exceedingly holden back, as it is with them that are very heavy of sleep, by reason either of fullness of meat, or of bodily labour. Methought I saw one of an exceeding great stature, and an infinite greatness call me by my name, and say unto me, What wouldest thou hear and see? Or what wouldest thou understand to learn and know? Then said I, Who art thou? I am, quoth he, Pymander, the mind of the great Lord, the most mighty and absolute Emperor. I know what thou wouldest have, and I am always present with thee. Then said I would learn of the things that are, and understand the nature of them, and know God. How, said he. I answered, that I would gladly hear. Then he, have me again in thy mind, and whatsoever thou wouldest learn, I will teach thee. When he had thus said, he was changed in his idea or form, and straightway in the twinkling of an eye, all things were opened unto me, and I saw an infinite sight. All things were becoming light, both sweet and exceedingly pleasant, and I was wonderfully delighted in the beholding of it. But after a little while there was a darkness, made in part, coming down obliquely, fearful and hideous, which seemed unto me to be changed into a certain moist nature, unspeakably troubled, which yielded a smoke as from fire, and from whence produced a voice unutterable, and very mournful, but inarticulate, insomuch that it seemed to have come from the light. Then from that light a certain holy word joined itself unto nature, and out flew the pure and unmixed fire from the moist nature, upward on high. It exceeded light, and sharp and operative withal, and the air, which was also light, followed the spirit, and mounted up to fire, from the earth and the water, insomuch that it seemed to hang and depend upon it. And the earth and the water stayed by themselves so mingled together, that the earth could not be seen for the water, but they were moved, because of the spiritual word that was carried upon them. Then said Pymander unto me, Dost thou understand this vision, and what it meaneth? I shall know, said I. Then said he, I am that light, the mind, thy God, who am before that moist nature that appeareth out of darkness, and that bright and lightful word from the mind is the Son of God. How is that, quoth I? Thus, replied he, understand it, that which in thee seeth and heareth the word of the Lord, and the mind, the Father God, differeth not one from the other, and the union of these is life. Trismegistus. I thank thee, Pymander, but first conceive well the light in thy mind and know it. When he had thus said, for a long time we looked steadfastly one upon the other, in so much that I trembled at his idea or form. But when he nodded to me, I beheld in my mind the light that is innumerable, and the truly indefinite ornament of world, and that the fire is comprehended or contained in or by a most great power, and constrained to keep its station. These things I understood, seeing the word of Pymander. And when I was mightily amazed, he said again unto me, Hast thou seen in thy mind that form which was before the interminated and infinite beginning? Thus Pymander to me, But whence, quoth I, or whereof are the elements of nature made? Pymander, of the will and counsel of God, which taking the word and beholding the beautiful world in the archetype thereof, imitated it, and so made this world by the principles and vital seeds or soul-like productions of itself. For the mind being God, male and female, life and light, brought forth by his word, another mind, the workman, which is being God of the fire and the spirit, fashioned and formed 7 other governors, which in their circles contain the sensible world, whose government or disposition is called fate or destiny, straightway leaped out or exalted itself from the downward born elements of God, the Word of God, into the clean and pure workmanship of nature, and was united to the workman mind, for it was co-substantial, and so the downward born elements of nature were left without reason, what they might be the only master. But the workman mind, together with the word containing the circles and whirling them about, turned around as a wheel his own workmanships, and suffered them to be turned from an indefinite beginning to an undeterminable end, for they always begin where they end. And the circulation or running round of these, as the mind willeth, out of the lower or downward born elements, brought forth unreasonable or brutish creatures, for they had no reason, the air flying things and the water such as swim. And the earth and the water were separated, either from the other, as the mind would. And the earth brought forth from herself such living creatures as she had, 4-footed and creeping beasts, wild and tame. But the Father of all things, the mind, being life and light, brought forth man, like unto himself, whom he loved as his proper birth, for he was all beauteous, having the image of his Father. For indeed God was exceedingly enamoured of his own form or shape, and delivered unto all his own workmanships. But he, seeing and understanding the creation of the workman in the whole, would needs also himself fall to work, and so was separated from the Father, being the sphere of generation or operation. Having all power, he considered the operations or workmanships of the 7, but they loved him, and everyone made him partaker of his own order. And he, learning diligently and understandingly the essence and partaking their nature, resolved to pierce and break through the circumference of the circles, and to understand the power of him that sits upon the fire. And having already all power of mortal things, of the living and of the unreasonable creatures of the world, stooped down and peeped through the harmony, and breaking through the strength of the circles, so shewed and made manifest the downward born nature, the fair and beautiful shape or form of God, which when he saw, having in itself the unstable beauty and all the operations of the seven governors, and the form or shape of God, he smiled for love, as if he had seen the shape or likeness in the water, or the shadow upon the earth of the fairest human form. And, seeing in the water a shape like unto himself, in himself he loved it, and would cohabit with it. And immediately upon the resolution ensued the operation, and brought forth the unreasonable image or shape. Nature, presently laying hold of what is so much loved, did wholly wrap herself about it, and they were mingled, for they loved one another. And for this cause, man above all things that live upon earth is double, mortal because of his body, and immortal because of the substantial man. For being immortal and having power of all things, he yet suffers mortal things, and such are subject to fate or destiny. And therefore, being above all harmony, he is made and become a servant to harmony, and being hermaphrodite, or male and female, and watchful, he is governed by and subject to a father that is both male and female, and watchful. After these things I said, Thou art my mind, and I am in love with reason. Then said Pymander, This is the mystery that to this day is hidden and kept secret, for nature being mingled with man brought forth a wonder most wonderful. For he, having the nature of the harmony of the seven, from him who I told thee, the fire and the spirit nature continued not, but forthwith brought forth 7 men, all males and females, and sublime, all on high according to the natures of the 7 governors. And after these things, O Pymander, quoth I am now come into a great desire and longing to hear. Do not digress or run out. But he said, Keep silence, for I have not yet finished the first speech. Trismegistus, behold, I am silent. Pymander, the generation therefore of these 7 was after this manner, the air being feminine, and the water, desirous of copulation, took from the fire its ripeness, and from the ether spirit, and so nature produced bodies after the species and shape of men. And man was made of life and light into soul and mind, of life the soul, of light the mind. And so all the members of the sensible world continued unto the period of the end, bearing rule and generating. Hear now the rest of that speech thou so much desirest to hear. When that period was fulfilled, the bond of all things was loosed and united by the will of God. For all living creatures, being hermaphroditical, or male and female, were loosed and united together with man. And so the males were apart by themselves, and the females likewise. And straightway God said to the Holy Word, Increase in increasing, and multiply in multitude, all you my creatures and workmanships. And let him that is endowed with mind know himself to be immortal, and that the cause of death is the love of the body, and let him learn all things that are. When he had thus said, providence by fate and harmony made the mixtures and established the generations. And all things were multiplied according to their kind. And he that knew himself came at length to the superstantial of every way substantial good. But he that through the error of love loved the body abideth wandering in darkness, sensible, suffering the things of death. Trismegistus. But why do they that are ignorant sin so much that they should therefore be deprived of immortality? Pymander. Thou seemest not to have understood what thou hast heard. Trismegistus. Peradventure I seem so to thee, but I both understand and remember them. Poimander. I am glad for thy sake, if thou understoodest them. Trismegistus. Tell me, why are they worthy of death that are in death? Pymander. Because there goeth a sad and dismal darkness before its body, of which darkness is the moist nature, of which moist nature the body consisteth in the sensible world, from where death is derived. Hast thou understood this aright? Trismegistus. But why or how doth he that understands himself go or pass into God? Pymander. That which the word of God said, say I, because the Father of all things consists of life and light, whereof man is made. Trismegistus. Thou sayest very well. Pymander. God and the Father is light and life, of which man is made. If therefore thou learn and believe thyself to be the life and light, thou shalt again pass into life. Trismegistus. But yet tell me more, O mind, how I shall go into life. Pymander. God saith, let the man endowed with a mind mark, consider, and know himself well. Trismegistus. Have not all men a mind? Pymander. Take heed what thou say, for I, the mind, come unto men that are holy and good, pure and merciful, and that live piously and religiously, and my presence is a help unto them, and forthwith they know all things, and lovingly they supplicate and propitiate the Father, and blessing him they give him thanks, and sing hymns unto him, being ordered and directed by filial affection and natural love, and before they give up their bodies to the death of them, they hate their senses, knowing the works and operations. Rather, I that am the mind itself will not suffer the operations or works which happen or belong to the body, to be finished and brought to perfection in them, but being the porter and doorkeeper, I will shut up the entrances of evil, and cut off the thoughtful desires of filthy works. But to the foolish and evil and wicked and envious and covetous and murderous and profane, I am far off giving place to the avenging demon, which applying unto him the sharpness of fire tormenteth such a man sensibly, and armeth him the more to all wickedness, that he may obtain the greater punishment. And such a one never ceaseth, having unfulfillable desires and insatiable concupiscence, and always fighting in the darkness, for the demon afflicts and tormenteth him continually, and increaseth the fire upon him more and more. Trismegistus. Thou hast, O mind, most excellently taught me all things as I desired, but tell me moreover, After the return is made, what then? Pymander. First of all, resolution of the material body. The body itself is given up to alteration, and the form which it had becometh invisible, and the idle manners are permitted and left to the demon, and the senses of the body return into the fountains, being parts and again made up into operations, and anger and concupiscence go into the brutish or unreasonable nature, and the rest striveth upward by harmony. And to the first zone it giveth the power it had of increasing and diminishing. To the second, the machinations or plotting of evils, and one of ineffectual deceit or craft. To the third, the idle deceit of concupiscence. To the fourth, the desire of rule and unsustainable ambition. To the fifth, profane boldness and headlong rashness of confidence. To the sixth, evil and ineffectual occasions of riches. And to the seventh zone, subtle falsehood, always lying in wait. And then being made naked of all operations of harmony, it cometh to the eighth nature, having its proper power, and singeth praises to the Father with the things that are, and all they that are present rejoice, and congratulate the coming of it, and being made like to them with whom it converseth, it heareth also the powers that are above the eighth nature, singing praise to God in certain voice that is peculiar to them. And then in order they return unto the Father, and themselves deliver themselves to the powers, and become powers they are in God. This is the good, and to the eye that know to be defied. Furthermore, why sayest thou, what resetteth but that understanding all men, thou become a guide and way leader to them that are worthy, that the kind of humanity or mankind may be saved by God? When Poimander has thus said unto me, he was mingled amongst the powers. But I, giving thanks and blessing the Father of all things, rose up, being enabled by him, and taught the nature of the whole, and having seen the greatest sight or spectacle. And I began to preach unto men the beauty and fairness of piety and knowledge. O ye people, men, born and made of the earth, which have given yourselves over to drunkenness and sleep, and to the ignorance of God, be sober, and cease your suffereth, whereto you are allured and invited by brutish and unreasonable sleep. And they that heard me come willingly, and with one accord. And then I said further, why, O men of the offspring of the earth, why have you delivered yourselves unto death? Having power to partake of immortality, repent and change your minds. You that have together walked in error, and have been darkened in ignorance, depart from that dark light, be partakers of immortality, and leave or forsake corruption. And some of them that heard me, mocking and scorning, went away and delivered themselves up to the way of death. But others, casting themselves down before my feet, besought me that they might be taught. But I, causing them to rise up, became a guide of mankind, teaching them the reasons how and by what means they may be saved. And I sowed in them the words of wisdom, and nourished them with ambrosian water of immortality. And when it was evening, and the brightness of the same began wholly to go down, I commanded them to give thanks to God, and when they had finished their thanksgiving, everyone returned to his own lodging. But I wrote in myself the bounty and beneficence of Pymander, and being filled with what I most desired, I was exceedingly glad. For the sleep of the body was the sober watchfulness of the mind, and the shutting of my eyes, the true sight, and my silence great with child and full of good, and the pronouncing of my words the blossoms and fruits of good things. And thus came to the pass, or happened unto me, which I received from my mind, that is, Pymander, the Lord of the Word, whereby I became inspired by God with the truth. For which cause my soul and whole strength I give praise and blessings unto God the Father. Holy is God the Father of all things, holy is God whose will is performed and accomplished by his own powers. Holy is God that determineth to be known, and is known of his own, or those that are his. Holy art thou that by thy word hast established all things. Holy art thou of whom all nature is the image. Holy art thou whom nature hath not formed. Holy art thou that apart stronger than all power. Holy art thou that art greater than all excellency. Holy art thou who art better than all praise. Accept these reasonable sacrifices from a pure soul and a heart stretched out unto thee. O thou unspeakable, unutterable, to be praised with silence. I beseech thee that I may never err from the knowledge of thee. Look mercifully upon me, and enable me and enlighten me with this grace, those that are in ignorance, and brothers of my kind, but thy sons. Therefore I believe thee, and bear thee witness, and go into the life and light. Blessed art thou, O Father, thy man would be sanctified with thee, as thou hast given him all power. The end of the second book.